Dean, the dancing machine. Look at
Hey Kim, how you doing?
you doing? Oh,
Good.
you look nice and relaxed there.
Oh, I forgot all about this, and then my buddy asked me, George said,
To
we have
wake
to go
up.
up to South Hole to winterize our oysters. I said, I think we've already done that.
Yeah. No, what's funny is this is coming in very late. Like everyone should have pretty much done.
I was thinking, man, those South Hole guys, they can oyster all the way up to Thanksgiving. My goodness.
Well, that's true. You could. You can't at Tiana because they take the docks out. But
Yeah.
we did fine. We did fine. How are you doing? You getting ready for the holidays and all that? And
Oh, I'm not ready at all, but just it's good to see a friendly face. I
yeah.
miss that.
Well, I see friendly faces all the time, so it's just your fault. You're just hanging out with the wrong group.
There you go.
You should always be around friendly faces. Eternally. Boy, are you telling me, Dean, that you are walking around seeing really unfriendly faces?
No, I don't get, no one tells jokes like you do, Kim. I don't
That's the
get,
only reason I'm doing this overwinter thing because I just discovered that there's like three or four more on YouTube. They're going to be the same as this one, just a different year. So it's all about the one-liners, you know? So
it's all about the jokes. I mean, that's the entertainment value.
that's what we do.
Come for the entertainment, stay for the jokes.
Yeah, Kimmy, she gets it all the time. She even comes to these ones. If you want some really low budget entertainment, the Greenport Library did a podcast of me where they let me ramble for an hour and 45 minutes unedited, and we put it out just like that. And we watched it. It took 5 nights to watch it, to rewatch it. It's like this is ridiculous. But it's
Did they not know you? Is that what happened? How did they think that was a great
a lot of
idea?
people really don't know what they're getting into. Like on Friday, I have to do a presentation, and at least the people I work with know me enough to say, "You got 15 minutes." Okay. And
Did it say 15 minutes knowing that you're gonna actually take 30?
no. Well, that's how it used to be, but I actually practice now. I do it on a PowerPoint timer, so.
Wow,
Yeah.
impressive.
Well, because the truth of the matter is that if you go to a conference and somebody is given 15 minutes to do a PowerPoint, here's what I've noticed. People that don't prepare, they get to minute 14 and they have 12 more slides and they rip through it and it's just like, God, it's so stupid, dude. I don't have any text up on any of my PowerPoints. If you can read it in front of you, then why are you showing it? I mean, why don't you just do it now and say, if you want stuff written out, just read along on your paper because I don't do text on it. I don't have time for this. Anyway, look at all these people coming in. Chris is a big fan of these things. No, I'm glad that people are coming out and Dean was commenting, do we have to go to Southall to overwinter? I thought we were done with this stuff. And the answer is yes, you're definitely done with this stuff. And I suppose that a lot of people are essentially done with overwintering their oysters. And I was thinking I might have to apologize. There are a couple things I did. My only homework I did was to look up if anyone's interested in how to overwinter oysters spat style, and we don't answer it in 2025, you can go to YouTube and you can watch the 2001 overwintering lecture, which actually has me doing. Uh, Now I'm beginning to like the fact that these are recorded. I didn't like it because of the missing the uh, the improvisation of the improv of the show. So the one-liners and if you record it and you said it once, you'd have to go back and watch the 2021, the 2023, and the 2024 one to see if the one-liners are always the same. It's like watching Ricky Gervais and he's doing the same joke over and over again. It's like it's got to be fresh. So, being recorded, you're really under pressure to come up with something fresh. It's like Jocko. Jocko Pastorius was actually dissed by his keyboard player because nothing he was doing was fresh. And this was when he was considered to be the best bass player in the world. But his keyboard player said, "Well, you kind of suck. You were good back then, but nothing is new." And so you have to stay fresh all the time. Okay. And this isn't a soap commercial, by the way. This is a different kind of fresh. So if you want to watch the 2000, oh, to answer Dean's question about something else we were talking about, I meander, and people that know me know that the stream of consciousness can go down a rabbit hole that we only have an hour tonight, so you're in luck. Okay. At 6 o'clock, Darcy's pulling our plug. Okay. So you're safe. I can meander up until 6. And then if you didn't learn a thing about overwintering oysters, then go back to the 2021 video. And in that one, I'm actually wearing my dad's shirt that he wore in France on the Brittany coast when he went to Mont Saint-Michel to look at the oysters grown in Cancale and Mont Saint-Michel. And I had just moved into the house. It was COVID 2021. The house isn't finished inside, and I'm doing the Zoom, but it's the one that actually has me with props in my hand, like a cage and some rigging. And so that 2021 video actually has some how to do some overwinter rigging. So that's available. The 2023 and 2024 one is kind of like the Greenport podcast. I don't have time in my life to watch myself for another hour then recorded. I mean, if I was going to do that, I would just before going to bed tonight, I'll record myself for an hour and I'll put it on a tape loop and I'll just play that every night and I'll go to sleep to it. Okay, that could work. So you can watch those things about overwintering the oysters. I'm here tonight to reassure. It's actually Darcy's fault. She said, Are you going to do the overwinter?" And it dawns on me that this is the first time in, well, all these years that I did the overwinter lecture in November. I believe it's like the 18th. I mean,
Yeah, you normally do it in October.
absolutely. They're all in October because that's when you want to overwinter your oysters before it gets too cold to do. So if you're a seasoned spatster or if you're or you grow at Tiana, you are certainly not worried about overwintering your oysters. But the good news is, if you're brand new to this program and you've never overwintered an oyster before, you're still pretty much in luck because what we've discovered is, truthfully, the way things are going with our winters, you really don't have to do an awful lot to overwinter your oysters. There is a checklist that we have on our website, and I'm going to give Darcy another shout out because, this whole program would just be such a kind of a silly disaster. It's great in the field. We'd all be muddy. We'd all have calluses. Our vertebrae, our backs don't work. None of that. We're getting oysters. But as far as paperwork or any sort of information or networking or that, I think we'd be in the cold without Darcy. I know we would be in the cold without Darcy. So here's to Darcy, and she made sure that we did another year of overwinter. And there is a checklist on our website that there are a couple things that no matter how many years that we've been, we are actually in our 25th year of overwintering oysters. And I think we got really intense about it the first 10 years and maybe eased off a little bit later on as oysters just never seem to die in the winter. And now we just have to reiterate a whole bunch of kind of essentials about overwintering because it never has anything to do with the oyster dying because it was cold unless they just went up on land all winter long. all winter long being, well, let's say all winter long, December 21st to March 21st, they're out of the water, uh, just up on the land. Then they're probably not going to make it. I just found some up on the land up at the Marine Center, and they were all dead. I don't know how long they've been there. They were kind of up in the shrubbery there, and I say that because, now is the time on Cape Cod where they're pulling all their oysters out. Well, no, not yet. In December, they will pull all their oysters out of the water. They'll put them on pallets, they'll put them in containers out of the water, upland, not in a freezer, but in a temperature controlled container for 2, 3 months. And then when they're sure that the ice isn't going to come back, they'll put their oysters back in the water. So they're leaving them out of the water for months, and oysters can handle it. What they can't handle is, yeah, go and by the way, if at any time you have questions as I'm rambling, dive right in because this is an open forum, so no problem there.
I'll take your opening. I have a question that this is Zachary Norris. I'm from Gilgo,
Hey,
by the way.
awesome.
Um,
And you guys,
is there
congratulate. Well, let me just chime in. Gilgo is our newest annex, and I'm so proud of you guys. This is part of because of Betty Rexroad and her Oak Island people really doing the true nature of ambassadorship, which is to spread the word. Now people in Gilgo can go and grow oysters, and I think you guys did really well this year. So go ahead.
Yeah, I've been doing some homework since this is our first year, and some of my family members have bought me some books, some other stuff that I've been reading, and with with the life cycle of an oyster and the origination, we'll call it, in January, February, where that's where they're bred and harvested. And then they hit 2 winter periods throughout their life cycle until they hit maturity-ish. Is there a desired time period within that 18 to 20 month life cycle of an oyster's life that you would want to hit the overwintering? Meaning, would you rather hit it earlier in its life cycle or later?
What do you mean
Because they grow less in the winter.
when you say I'm not really following what
You guys birth the oysters in January, February. They
No,
hit
no,
their
but
first
here,
winter,
no,
not
no,
for
no,
10,
but
11
listen,
months after that.
no, but listen, here, the thing is this, whenever we're talking about the oyster in Spat, we can to always talk about it two ways. The natural life cycle and the natural everything of an oyster and the hatchery and the manipulative nature of something like the Spat program. So
Got it.
keep in mind, and your question actually, your question leads me into a different direction, which I'll talk to you about in a second. So here's what's going on. For oysters in it naturally, they're going to keep feeding until it gets too cold to feed,
Okay.
which is up in the air where that is. It also means that it's cold enough that microalgae is not really growing enough that there's a lot of food. Both of those things right now, in my opinion, where we live, are in question when that is, because
The temperature fluctuation.
not just that. I mean, I I for the last 2 or 3 years have been running my floating upweller nursery system over winter with oyster seed in it. And people say, well, why do you bother doing that? They're not going to feed, they're not going to grow, they're not going to do well, but I can handle, 6, 7, 8,000 of them in a barrel instead of putting them in cages and all these things. But what I found
Yeah.
is that what I found is that so that's fine, it's good storage. But what I found that's much more interesting is that new shell growth that you see. Stops occurring pretty late in the season. Like I think they're still growing now, even though I can tell you the water's definitely getting colder and clearer. But also, more importantly, in the early spring, like, March they're already starting to feed. And you would say, well, they can't be feeding now. That look at the water looks so clear, and it's not warm and all these things. But oysters seem to be uh, hibernating a lot shorter period than. Keep in mind something else. Our oyster, Crassostrea virginica, the eastern oyster, which is found from all the way up to the Bredor Lakes, all the way down to the Texas Panhandle and around there. The Bredor Lakes, you get 4 feet of ice. I mean, it's not like 8 inches of ice. They get ice, okay? And oysters have to be below it, well below it, so they don't get crushed. But oysters can withstand very cold temperatures. They're hibernating there for sure. I just question how much they're hibernating here. So now here was where your question came in that is interesting. What happens? So that's in nature. They're going to maybe hibernate when it gets cold. They're going to come out of hibernation as it warms up and algae is starting to bloom, and they're going to then as the temperature is coming up and there's food availability, they are then going to be conditioning themselves for spawning. They're putting on reproductive growth during that period of time, and it's usually, if it starts, let's say April 1st, they're usually ready to spawn June-ish or so. Okay. Now, what we're doing in the hatchery is completely different. And I will tell you that the spat people, and anybody can, we're all spat people, but there are some really neurotic spat people. They come in every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No, Dean, did you just raise your hand, Dean, that you're one of the neurotic? I was going to say, I mean, you're not neurotic, you're regular. We can make you neurotic. We can get you to the neurotic state, which is when it's hatchery season, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there seems to be this competition on who's going to get into spat earliest. It's usually Bart. He's there. I get in at 7. We start the hatchery routine, which right now has started. We start to grow our microalgae. And as we're growing our microalgae and it's coming up, now we can choose the adults we want to condition to spawn for what they just put on the calendar as a January 15th spawn. Now, a January 15th spawn is literally January, February, March, April, May, June. It's five. And so that's 5 months earlier from 5 or 6 months earlier than a natural spawn. There's nothing natural about an oyster spawning January 15th in the Northeast. So that's pure manipulation, which comes up in other lectures, so you can look at it on how to condition broodstock and how to spawn them. But the interesting part of your question is this. If you choose your broodstock now and start conditioning it now, it never went into hibernation. Actually in pretty fine health right now, and you're going to trick it back into spring conditioning mode. So I think what you're going to find is that you're going to get super healthy animals. The only person that ever alluded that fact to me was Dave Relier from Frank M. Flower and Son, who said that they never pull their oysters when they're cold. They pull them early, kind of keep them in maintenance so that they never go into hibernation. And then when they start conditioning them, you don't need to bring them back to like level. Because picture hibernation being that they built up a sugar reserve and it's here, but in hibernation, they're using it. They're not gaining. So they're kind of clicking their sugar cubes down. And then as it comes up and they come out of hibernation, they're going to bring it back up. So what he's saying is, well, we never let it go down. We leave it level and then bring it up from there. And so that's what we're trying this year. On another couple notes, and you guys should pay attention to this if you want to get into the real nuts and bolts on how to grow oysters from scratch, because we're doing crazy stuff as a community group. We're doing what they're doing on a commercial level. If you're a commercial hatchery, you're looking for those early spawns too. even at Cornell, they say, why are you starting so early? I remember this year, I call this year because it's still 2015. Personally, the growing season for me is just about over. We're overwintering, we're done. So we're already gearing up for 2026 crop. And in 2025, we did our first spawn January 30th and offered up extra larvae we had. And none of the other hatcheries at Cornell were ready for it yet. It's like, why are you doing it so early? And the reason why we're doing it early is because if you do early spawns and you get good settlement and you get good spat, you probably are witnessing right now everybody that grew oysters this year of this year's oyster seed. You probably noticed that they grew pretty darn well and they got pretty big, considering, still in nature, theoretically, in most places, a 3-year-old oyster to market it is a 3-inch oyster to market is 3 years old. And that's a natural in Maine and in the Canada, it's like 5 years. You get these oysters, they're like nuggets of coal. Why? Well, they're 5 years old and they're the size of what we are now growing in 10 months. Not the same cup, might not be the same meats, but shell length, it's the same in 10 months, which is insane. So, that's a tricky question. I have to parse it a little bit, and I don't think I answered a thing that you wanted me to answer. So that's all I got. Did I come close? No, it didn't
Yeah,
answer.
no, I think so, and I think you kind of hit it when you started to run through what some of the commercial hatcheries do, in that they mimic what would be summer temperatures forever, so that they don't allow the oysters to hibernate. And I think the connect the dots there that I'm looking at is so that they can hit commercially viable sizes faster. Is what they're doing. Is that correct?
And keep in mind what goes on with oysters is quite simply this. With a program like ours, if you were to well, let's back up a second and just for a second about commercial oyster industry. So if you're
Sure.
a commercial oyster grower and you want to get seed, and you've been at it a while, you got all your setup, and you want to get your seed early because if you can get your seed, in mid-May, you're going to get a nice size oyster by the time you sock it home for the winter.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead and try to get oyster seed in May. It's very
Yeah.
hard to. And one of the reasons why is this. A lot of the commercial oyster hatcheries are vertically integrated. So in other words, they're not just selling seed, they're selling oysters, they're growing oysters. So those early batches are gold. And they're not going to sell their gold if they're vertically integrated. They're going to keep the first, it's like, common sense. You even if they were to sell the culls and the runts of early stuff, that early stuff is still, even the runts are valuable. So, it's not easy. The commercial hatchery, it's not easy because you have to keep something in mind. And I would love all you budding spat people that want to learn this stuff. This year, 2025, was a couple things for me. It was let me see, I started so that was 30 years. That was my 34th year of growing oysters this year. Okay, 34 years of growing oysters. That's 30 years at Cornell and 4 years in Rhode Island. So to say this statement, which I'm going to say, which is the truth, it was my best year this year. And, I think there are actual reasons why that was. We're not trying to hit or miss. We've been working on the genetics for thinking that we might be able to be teasing out some kind of fast growth element. But this year, we had the best growth and the best survival I've ever had in my life. And, you know, other commercial growers had had remarkable years too. So whether it was that just everything kind of aligned this year, or I know a lot of the hatcheries are paying a lot of attention to genetics. I've been at this for th literally for 34 years, and I just found out this year for the first time about the genetics of shell shape and the backwards oyster hinge. I mean, I never paid attention to that. I've been at this a long time. Maybe the reason why is I don't open oysters from the hinge, so I never looked. It's like, come on, guy. And then all of a sudden, I hear during a conference, it was Skid Row saying, there's this hatchery, and they got a complaint because like 75% of their oysters have the hinge that turns backwards. It goes through its reverse. And I never even thought about it. But son of a gun, now I look at every oyster hinge and I'm like, look at that. And so when we're picking brood stock, uh, we're paying attention to shell shape. I just never thought that. I thought that oysters were inherently amorphous in a way, but maybe you could tame them into being what the creator thought an oyster should look like. Well, turns out that, there's a lot involved. There's a lot more involved in oyster shell shape than I thought there was. And I just think that's the coolest thing. Has anyone noticed, for instance, that for the last year or two, that your oysters are starting to look more and more like duck's feet with the little crenulations? They almost look like scalloped. The up and down thing, they look like little talons or duck feet. The only time I ever saw that in the past was oysters not grown in cages. They were grown on the bottom, nice, healthy oysters, very fast growing. Now we're seeing them across the board. So I think there's an element to some of the things we're playing around with that are taking hold. But if you saw the Spat crew during this year's season of what we had to do, this is getting back to the point of why it's difficult to do early spawns. Okay. Picture this. You're in let's throttle back to say that you are thinking you're an oyster grower and you've been buying seed and you're kind of not getting it early enough. So you say to yourself in your infinite wisdom, I'll just start a little hatchery in my garage. I've got salt water. I'm lucky enough. I live on the water. I can get a water thing flow into my garage. I'm going to start a little hatchery. And you do all this stuff and you spend all this money. You spend your wife's money, actually. You don't, that's the only way you're going to get anywhere is that. Okay. So you're spending no, 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 this is not me. We're not talking about me. We're talking about, somebody else. And so you build this hatchery and you're doing it. And now you do a January, you grew all this algae and you fed these adults and they ate really well. You only had 12 oysters because you didn't have enough food for feeding more than 12 for 6 weeks. And you fed them and you fed them. You did a spawn and they spawn like crazy. And you've got algae and you're feeding 5 million larvae and everything's great. And you set them and they said, great, you got 20%. And you got 1 million oyster larvae. And you know what? It's January. You did it on January 15th because the Spat guys were doing it and you wanted to copy them. Okay, now it's January 30th and you've got little oysters. Well, hello. You've got to now grow enough food for them until like 1st of April. Okay. And that's just your first spawn. That was just your January 15th spawn. So we did this last year. We did a January 30th spawn. We did a 4th of July spawn. And I believe we did the next March 1st spawn. And they were all good spawns and we had a lot to feed. So we became freaks about growing algae. And we filled every bucket we could. And it was a lot of work and we learned huge lessons. We're building a new building because of that this year, which we're almost finished with. And it's exciting time because, Spat, we're just so wacky. We just do the craziest stuff as a community. We almost don't have a care in the world on how anything comes out. And because of that kind of laissez-faire approach, it's coming out great. I mean, I think it's because, well, no, I mean, I say that jokingly because we pay a lot of attention to what we do. And I think it's fascinating that our program is community entirely. And we run a shellfish hatchery that is competitive in approach to seasoned pros because we are seasoned pros. And so, you know, this year we met all of our demands. One of our demands was for 750,000 oysters, which we planted, and that was huge. This was the first year that I ever was involved in a planting that almost sank the boat because there were so many oysters on it. And that was a cool feeling. It reminded me of the pictures of the people coming up from the seed beds on these barges with these barges just filled on deck to the sky with spat on shell that they were going to dump overboard. And these boats had like no freeboard. There was like a couple inches of maybe a foot, but boy, you don't want to do that in a big storm. And that was exciting seeing, and these oysters were back-breakingly big at planting. We like created a living reef in one planting. It was phenomenal. And we want to do that every year. We had clam seed this year. We gave out, people planted clam seed. We want to do that. Scallops, we want more and more to work on. It's challenging. The Cornell people are working hard on it, and I believe that there's some headway happening with the genetics there and the issue with the parasite there. Did anyone get scallops for opening day? Did anyone go scalloping or did anyone eat scallops? Raise your hand. Nobody? Okay, well, I didn't either. Can't remember the last time I went scalloping, but anyway, here's the bottom line with overwintering, getting back to the point of all of this, is that for the last bunch of years, I've noticed that there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do to screw it up except for the following. You didn't tie the stuff up well enough if you were at your own dock and it blew away. That's the most common problem. It's never that my oysters were fine, but when I pulled them up, they were all dead. That doesn't ever seem to be anybody's issues. It's not even that half of them were dead. They didn't survive the winter. It's usually that either the whole thing's gone or the whole thing broke apart in a storm or these kind of things. Um, and so if that's your case, uh, you can if you live in an area where your oysters are in potential danger of the elements because of either you're moving the dock or you're going to Florida and you can't tend it, and you can move them to the Marine Center. We can tolerate that. We moved 100 growers over to Tiana, and that was fine. And the thing that I learned about Tiana, we have 100 growers at Tiana. It's all floating gear. And what I learned over these years, we've been doing that for like 15 years, and we've spent a lot of time overwintering, only to discover that you can pretty much just leave them alone the way they are. Dean actually, and we have not ground truth this, but one year Dean brought his oysters over. He had taken the floats off and they were in the cages, and I think it was kind of cold or something, or we were in a hurry or whatever it was. We just hung them straight down as an experiment and they did fine.
You see the microphone?
I still don't really recommend it, but it was a nice experiment.
Or speak priming.
And the point being that they were deep in the water. They were all kind of jammed down to the bottom, but he did it late and he got them early. So there wasn't a big meltdown or anything. So, that was like the probably singular most lazy approach to overwintering that I've ever done with a member. And it was fine. So it just goes to show you, I guess the worst would be this. You have your oysters, you cut the floats off and you throw the bag on the bottom. That's about the worst thing you can do. Other than that, you know, what's happening at the Marine Center now is we have well over, because of all of Tiana, we have well over 200 members that all of the gear is floating. And my only comment, and this is up for grabs, this is going to be, again, I don't think it's going to be much of an experiment. It never seems to be. People are putting them either on the sides or on the top, the floats. And I say, well, in the wintertime, if they're on the top, then if there is an ice formation, it when it starts to form, the cage that the oysters are in are under the floats. And so the ice should be forming at the top of the cage and at the bottom of the floats. And so if it does indeed form, let's say, like at the Marine Center, I've walked on that. I've been there with 8 inches of ice. But even in that time, you wouldn't see any of the floats. They'd all be embedded in ice, and the oysters would all be underneath the ice. If the ice trapped the entire cage and made a big ice cube of the float and the cage with the oysters, it might kill the oysters. I've never seen it. Again, I've been there 30 years and we've been doing spat for 25 of it. And we've never had a meltdown to ice. The bigger deal with ice is usually that if it freezes solid, when it starts to break apart and now it's an ice flow, it'll lift up a VW and take it out to gardeners. It can move anything. Ice can move mountains. So in Cedar Beach, it's never much of an issue. There's nowhere for anything to go. But out,
Hey, Ken,
yeah.
when you finished, you do have a few comments in the chat.
Oh, are we already at? Oh, okay. Chat. I've never even been to. I'm going to go visit my chat box. What does this say? How nice. Who's the little chat? Here's chat. Hi. Oh, makeshift. Uh, a Bilko door last year with a what? Oh, you know what's hilarious? I don't know. Very well. Yeah, yeah. Hold on. You guys say, don't mind me. I never learned. How are we doing with scallops? Yep. Okay. So here's the thing. I need reading glasses, but I refuse even in my own house to wear them. So, oh, no, here comes my wife with some. No, I got 4 pair on my desk. Look, I got them everywhere.
Thank you, Kimmy.
Okay. No, I mean, I have my own. Look, if you want to see how many pair of glasses, I just refuse. No. So to answer some of these questions, this whole, the thing I made a makeshift cave and put my oysters in a bilka. Oh, I remember talking to you, Ken, about this. Didn't we talk about this? Yeah. That's amazing. This guy, Ken, we talked about this. Ken made his own container to take his oysters out of the water and put them in this temperature controlled cave in the what I imagine is this bilko. As the bilko goes down to the basement, there's this like little almost like a root cellar, and he threw a moisture and temperature alarm in there and did the styrofoam insulation on it. And according to this, for January, February, and March, sprayed them with water every 3 days. That's amazing. There's a guy that's we're in the same boat, which is a bad boat. It's a crazy boat. I mean, you don't want to go out with us. I mean, we're coming back, but I don't know what we're going to look like coming back. We're going to have palm fronds and crazy, awesome stuff hanging off of us. So thank you about that. I wouldn't necessarily tell SPAT members that they must convert their root cellars into oyster depositories for the winter, but what I would say that anyone that wants to try it, and other things, there's a couple things coming down that people can actually try. Just don't do it with all of your stock. So if the experiment goes bad, I don't have to give you 100% refund. 50% is fine. No, even if you do, by the way, all experimentation is commended by me and warranted with your oysters. If you're going to experiment honestly and it goes awry, we'll take care of you because we're not doing this. We're doing this for this reason. We can get so much information just the way we go about things. I've learned so much Every year I learn something new. And it goes on and on and on. And it wouldn't go on and on and on if you just had your fixed way of doing things, especially if your fixed way of doing things isn't working. So we're firing on a lot of cylinders these days, and it's a team effort. So this kind of information, so here's where this information comes in. You're going in for your overwintering, and you've got all kinds of options. I mean, look at these guys in Wellfleet. The reason why they pull their oysters out and put them in containment wasn't because they just didn't feel like going out to the flats to deal with their oysters in the winter, and it was easier to just walk into their little container and grab a bag of oysters to eat. It's because the ice would take all of their stuff away. It would just take it, grab it, and scour it all away. And they, whether it's in gear or whatnot, they didn't want to lose all their stuff. So they did it this way. And they know that oysters have a built-in antifreeze and they're very tolerant. It's just that how can you control it and how long can you stay out? I remember my first or second or third year of Spat, where one of my members came up to me. It was um, uh, Bill Rich. Bill Rich was an ingenious fellow, and he was growing right around Commodore Point in New Suffolk area, and he would overwinter his oysters. And he said to me, I put my oyster cages in the garage after I gave him a gear change, but I guess I missed some because I found five of them in the garage in April, and four of them were alive. So he was talking 4 months in his garage, almost 5 months in his garage, and five of them lived. So it was already a sign that, well, these things, it's not like, you know, it, they're rigged in a way. They're rigged for that. That seems extreme to me, that you would want to do that. But the point is quite simply, for instance, if your oysters go high and dry in a tidal cycle in the dead of winter, they're not going to die if they're covered by water during the high tide cycle. If they do that every day, oysters are uh, evolutionarily prepared for that, so they can do that. But you also want to, hedge your bets. Here's what I think is most important about overwintering an oyster that I may have. It's not that I've totally failed to ever mention this, but uh, it's not about the winter and oysters, in my opinion. It's the upcoming spring and oysters that matter. Because here's why. The water temperature is going to come up such that oysters are going to say, oh, this is great. This is awesome. But humans aren't. They're going to say, it's still freaking cold. I'm not going out there. I'm not going out there for a good another month or so. And so there is where oysters can be compromised. If you didn't prepare for them coming out of the winter nicely, then you're you can be putting them in more peril than the winter time itself. It's the spring where all of a sudden their metabolism starts to kick in again. And now the question is, oh, here's a huge mistake, by the way. Well, they're not going to grow in the winter. So I'll just take my 4 bags and I'll consolidate them into one big one. Now, that might be fine and good. They weren't growing, but when they start growing, it's going to be like Jiffy Pop. And when do you get back out there to deal with not only the oysters growing, but all the fowlers that are going to come up in the early spring? So part of this overwintering is the thought of how are they going to feel coming out of the spring into the spring? And I really am getting hypersensitive about that because when people, for instance, from Tiana come to get their oysters, if they come and get them in May and early May and into early June, they look at these oysters and they can see how much they're growing in May. They're growing a lot. And it's like, okay, well, I better, clean these up nice, get them back into the blah, 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 and this and that, get them back out to Tiana. The water grows great at Tiana. I wish I had it at the Marine Center. The water at the Marine Center is growing great these days. Nothing grows like Tiana and Goose Creek. That's just because of the nature of the beast. It's always going to be that way, that water is not equal, and oysters know when they've got it good, and they've got it really good at Tiana. I know that. And by the way, the question was, how are scallops doing? Well, what's very interesting is that scallops are doing so far, I believe, the best in Moriches Bay. And we're going to be watching that. But Cornell's been doing a bunch of work in with scallops. I don't know what Stony Brook is doing, but I know that Harrison in our group is working uber diligently with all the right people with scallops. And last year, I think the hottest spot was Moriches Bay. I think it might. I'm yet to be totally apprised of the scallop harvest, but they were bringing them in. So there's hope. Hope is always springs eternal. So we're going to be doing that. So I love that. Can you describe how you set up the gear for the winter using the cage that we have been growing them in for the summer? So basically, if everyone, so in the past, we made people jump through a lot of hoops to overwinter that maybe were not important to do. The reason why, for instance, back for years and years and years, I had everybody at Tiana overwintering their oysters in lantern nets, was not because of the safety of the oysters freezing, but because of storage issues at the Marine Center. That was the only reason, because I couldn't figure out if I could handle that many floating cages at the Marine Center. And last year we had kind of a mixed bag of them. And it turns out that however you are comfortable, what gear you're comfortable in overwintering, we have it for you and we will show you how to do it. If you're growing them in floating cages and you're comfortable with them, then they're going to be fine there. The only caveat is I don't know where you're growing them. So if you're growing them at a dock that, for instance, you're pulling your dock and now you've just got a piling, well, that changes how you were growing them. So you have to be prepared for the winter not having your dock and maybe be able to go and look at it. Another scenario is that you want to harvest them throughout the winter, and you want a lunchbox or something. So you want to, you always have to anticipate, by the way, unfortunately, or at least I do. Whenever I go into the winter, I'm getting worse at it, but I always anticipate that there's going to be ice. I just do. I'll never forget Billy Blanchard. But he was an oyster grower for a while. He's a house painter. Great guy, Billy. I haven't seen him in a while, but if you're out there watching Billy, well, you're not, so don't worry about it. But I remember he was out in Hogneck Bay and he's like, I'm so tired of putting these ice buoys down on my gear. Every year I go and put an ice buoy. We never get any ice. I'm not doing it. And that year we got ice, and all of his gear ended up in Gardiner's Bay because, like I said, ice flows will lift a VW and take it out to Gardiner's Bay. That was a direct reference to Billy Blanchard's oyster cages disappearing because of ice. So that was a weird year. Yeah, that was the year I was living on Shelter Island and the ferry had to crack through the ice every morning. It looked like people were clubbing seals because of the red bottom paint. It was weird. It was surreal that year. And you know, I don't know. You'd have to talk to Al Gore about it. I have no clue what it's going to be like this year, next year, or otherwise. But I do know that oysters are going to be a lot happier than we are, no matter what. No, that's not true. That's not true. I take that back. I'm sorry I said that. Oysters do not like warm winters here. If you get a warm winter here, unfortunately, you're going to probably see more of your 2-year-old overwinter oysters dying at about 10 oysters from your bag of 100 a week or a month. And that could be dermo. That would be dermo. That's how dermo kind of manifests itself in pretty much a 2-year-old oyster coming out of a warm winter. Uh, and it looks like it's ready to eat, and like you'll lose 10 of them just as you're going for your party. That could be dermo. As you're looking at oysters, as you're opening them, dermo, no matter what time of year, looks like the oyster has just spawned out and is all kind of thin and emaciated and watery. That's kind of what dermo. You shouldn't be able right now and coming up to see any oysters that look, overly thin and watery. They should be really starting to put on a lot of sugars in the thought of having to hibernate. So they really are putting on some overwinter glycogen now. So yeah, I mean they don't we don't want it's a fine dance. We would like it to be humans always want it to be warm in the ice. No, there's snow, but I mean I've been burning my wood stove 24/7, so it's 80 in my house. I don't know. I've got a t-shirt on, I don't care because I like to heat with wood, and I married an iguana. So, so, but some people like it cold. Oysters are fine with cold, and and I don't know. I think we're going to be having to pay real close attention in the next couple of years to any kind of this is weird because I just said we had the best year we've had. Well, but that's with this year's seed. This year's seed, best year. Now we have to start looking at last year's oysters and the 3-year-olds. Are you starting to lose them because we just have not had any cold winters? So is the dermo pressure there, and is it noticeable? I I've had people comment that they've lost a whole bunch of their what they say, well, my nice big ones. There's always a way of managing around dermo. Eat more oysters that I'm always trying to show people how nice and meaty this just 3-inch oyster is, or even 2.5 inch, nice with a nice cup. It's like, keep eating them and you won't lose them. You lose them that way. If you're trying to grow big oysters, oh, and by the way, I don't know if anyone's going to the fundraiser at the I had a little plug for Happy Oyster Company. Happy Oyster, Bart, my colleague, everybody at Tiana knows Bart, but Bart owns the Happy Oyster Company in West Hampton Beach, and he's throwing us a fundraiser on Sunday. And the tickets were there. It was very nice. People are coming out, but boy, are they going to get some oysters. These are all oysters I grew. And there's going to be coming off of the grill, we had to size them by ridiculously huge, like one oyster per po' boy kind of size coming off the grill. Uh, and the oyster stews, there's going to be two stews, and then raw bars galore. But I mean, if you want to see oysters, this is the time of year to be eating oysters right now. I mean, right now. I think I'm gonna sneak over I have some live in-shell scallops, and I think I'm gonna grab a bag, and we're gonna sample some live in-shell scallops too. And if you don't make that fundraiser, by the way, no worries. You can always double back to the Raise Shell 2025 in Greenport weekend that's going to follow. And you've probably seen the blast again. Thanks, Darcy. And this is all new for us. I don't do a lot of. I try not to worry too much about fundraising, but we're doing all kinds of very interesting things. All of our money that we bring in uh, goes to the most interesting things. I mean, I think SPAT members enjoy. It's an open invitation, and people are starting to really come around. But I mean, right now we're building, I call it the Spat Memorial Bioreactor. It's as a kind of a little bit of a joke because our algae bioreactors in the big hatchery cost, I think they're $55,000 each. We have four of them. The Spat bioreactor, I think I have about $2,000 into it. They included the entire building, which we're finishing tomorrow. And all the tankerage was free from a Spat member. So it's fascinating. I love the fact that Spat. I joke around. Maybe this is derogatory to say that we're hobo hatchery. Everything about us is this like just nitty gritty way of doing it. And it's just so awesome. It is the epitome of appropriate technology and community at work. And, I don't care. It's not about money. We can take $1 and build a $50 machine out of it. And that's what we do all day long. We have a new solar driven electric gantry for the floating upwellers that, all of the stuff we're building is with retirees and Spat people with time on their hands that can come out to build this stuff. It's just fascinating and we should. I've been very nonchalant about showing us off. I just like us being who we are. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's about time the world starts to find out what the heck we're up to because uh, for you, I'm gonna get emotional and heady for one quick second because we're about to end not only this session, but we're about to end the 25th year of Spat. Okay. And, you know, Spat has, if we're trying to save humanity, Spat has saved one human being, and that's me. I mean, Spat, when people say, well, how come you don't retire? Well, you can't retire from something that is your entire life, that it's your whole community, it's your whole psyche. You don't retire from that. I saw a comment about, I'm not going to we're raising Shell, but there was a comment about an event that happened in the past that stopped happening because of volunteer burnout. And I almost made a t-shirt that said, well, SPAT volunteers don't burn out. And then I had to stop because I was going to say, they just die. And then I would put in parentheses, they just die of old age. And then I thought, none of that's appropriate. SPAT members don't burn out. We're all energizer bunnies, for God's sake. I mean, freaking Otto comes in every Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 90 plus. He's not burning out. He'll never burn out, and we'll never burn out with him. So, I don't know what we discovered in SPAT as a community approach to getting work done. But I will tell you that after 25 years of witnessing it, I can't for the life of me think of a whole lot of other things that offer that. There's nothing in the world that offers it to me. And that's heady stuff. And the world should know that if you can find a common ground in something that is important across the board. It can be important economically, environmentally, socially, religiously. It doesn't matter. If it all comes together and it brings people together, then it is a good thing. And we've got that in what we do. And, whether it's the magic elixir, it was for me, but whether it is or isn't, the world should know about it. And so we're still going to just do what we do, but maybe we'll brag a little bit more. Maybe we'll I don't know. I'm no good at it. I'm throwing it to Darcy. Darcy, make us famous, damn it. I don't want to be famous.
I'm trying.
I don't want to be, you're doing more than trying. I don't want to be famous. I want to be infamous.
I don't have to try and make you famous. You already are.
No, you know what? We are having fun. People should be having fun. So not everybody can have as much fun as us, but some more people can have more fun. So we'll let people know that we're having fun. And if they want to come and join, we'll become bigger. Even if it's in, California, we'll bring it over there. I won't go. My son's over there, but thanks everyone. Stay in touch. You can now go to dinner. And don't forget to eat oysters. If anyone needs anything, come in for the holidays or whatnot, uh, absolutely come and see me. And look at who's here. Harry's here. We miss you, Harry.
I'll be back. I'll be
Come
back
back.
soon.
I love all you guys.
Awesome.
You're the word. Oh, wait. Go get that bowl. Go get that bowl. I want to show you something. I'm going to end on this note because this is so funny. I don't know where she got this, but can we put this on okay, so now here's here's an oyster shell thing. And this was sitting inside of it. And this is a crystal globe of the world. The world is my oyster sitting on my.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. I just thought,
Oh, that's very cool. Where did you get that?
They found them separately. I mean, so the world is, careful with it. Don't ding the oyster. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome stuff.
Oh, awesome. And let's stay in touch. We don't, by the way, we do not close ever. We're open, we're Monday, Wednesday, but we don't close for the winter. Our winter's our busiest time, so don't be strangers.
Absolutely. I'll come down. Thanks, Kim.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye. Have a
Great
good
job,
night.
Kim.
I'm going to stop
Miss you.
my recording.
Eric and Peg.
Yeah.
Look at
Thank you.
Awesome. How do I
See you
stop?
guys tomorrow in Riverhead.
Hey, where's my stop recording? Darcy, help me. Where's my stop recording thing? Where is it? How do I stop recording?
It's somewhere on the bottom.
Or it should be, but I don't see it. It's not
I
more.
don't know. I think if you just end the meeting, it will just stop recording.
I hope so. Okay, here goes.
All right. Good night, guys.
See you.
Have a
Bye.
good one. Bye.